What if the New York Jets didn't just trade a quarterback, but quietly admitted they were wrong? Because when Justin Fields was shipped to the Kansas City Chiefs for a future sixth-round pick, it didn't feel like a normal roster move. It felt like an exit, a reset, a decision that had been building long before it became official. And if you look closely, the signs were always there. This matters more than it looks. Because quarterbacks don't just get traded after one season unless something deeper isn't working, especially not a former first-round talent, especially not a player with Fields' athletic profile. But this wasn't about potential anymore. This was about trust. And somewhere along the way, the Jets lost it. Now go back to how this started. Fields arrives in New York with a chance. Not a guarantee, but a real opportunity to stabilize a franchise that has been searching for quarterback answers for years. Not decades, years stacked on years. And at first, there was hope, because Fields brings something you can't teach: explosiveness, playmaking, outside structure, the ability to turn broken plays into highlights. But here's the problem with that kind of skill set in the NFL. It excites you until it doesn't sustain you. Because over time, the question always becomes the same. Can you operate within structure when the chaos isn't there? And for Fields in New York, that answer never became clear. The season didn't just have ups and downs. It had instability. He starts, then he's out. A concussion early in the year opens the door. Another quarterback steps in. Then Fields comes back. Then he returns again because of injury. Then he's out again. That's not development. That's survival. And quarterbacks don't grow in survival mode. That they stall, they hesitate, they lose rhythm. And maybe most importantly, the team around them stops believing in continuity. By the end of the season, the numbers told part of the story. 1,259 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. But numbers never tell you how a team feels about a quarterback. And that's the part that mattered most here. Because even when Fields was healthy, even when he was available, the Jets never fully handed him the offense. And that hesitation, that's everything. Because in the NFL, if a team truly believes in you, they commit, they build around you, they remove doubt. The Jets didn't do that. Instead, they rotated, adjusted, searched, and eventually moved on. Now here's where the story takes a turn. Because if you only look at this from Fields' perspective, it feels like another setback, another team, another reset, another what if. But the landing spot, that changes everything. Because Kansas City isn't New York, it's not chaos, it's not instability, it's structure, it's clarity. It's a system built around one of the most complete quarterbacks in football, Patrick Mahomes. And that matters more than people realize. Because for the first time in his career, Fields doesn't have to be the answer. He just has to improve. No pressure to carry a franchise, no expectation to start immediately, just time. And in the NFL, time is the one thing young quarterbacks almost never get. But here's the twist that makes this situation so compelling. Mahomes is coming off a torn ACL, which means this safe backup role, it might not stay safe for long. There's a window here, a real one. And it creates an open loop in this entire story. Because if Fields gets on the field in Kansas City, we're going to learn something we've never fully seen before. What does Justin Fields look like in a functional system? Not one searching for identity, not one struggling offensively, but one that actually understands how to maximize quarterback strengths. And that answer, it doesn't come in week 1. It doesn't come early. It comes later if the opportunity presents itself. Now, let's zoom back to the Jets, because their side of this decision is just as important. Moving on from Fields wasn't just about performance, it was about direction. Because by making this trade, they made one thing clear. They've chosen Geno Smith, not as a placeholder, not as a bridge, but as their quarterback. And that's a statement, because Geno represents the opposite of Fields in many ways. Less explosive, more controlled, less improvisation, more structure. And that tells you exactly what the Jets want their offense to become: stable, predictable, in a good way, efficient. But here's the risk in that decision, because while Geno raises your floor, he doesn't necessarily raise your ceiling. And in today's NFL, that trade-off matters a lot, because teams don't just win with stability anymore. They win with difference makers. So now the Jets are betting that stability is more valuable than upside, that consistency is more important than flashes. That decision might work, but it also might cap them. Now add another layer. The financial side. The Jets are reportedly paying $7 million just to move Fields. Let that sink in. They're paying him to play somewhere else. That's not just a transaction. That's a decision to move forward at a cost, because keeping him would have created cap complications anyway. But instead of holding on to him as insurance, they chose clarity. And clarity in this case meant separation. Now look at the bigger picture. This trade creates three very different paths. For the Jets, a clean quarterback room, a defined leader, a chance to build without distractions. For the Chiefs, low-risk upside, a talented backup with starting experience, insurance during Mahomes' recovery, and potentially a reclamation project that could pay off. And for Fields, this is the turning point. Third team in 3 seasons, from the Chicago Bears to the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Jets, and now Kansas City. That's not normal for a quarterback with his talent. That's a signal that the league is still unsure what he is. Franchise quarterback, high-end backup, system-dependent playmaker, nobody knows yet. And that's what makes this next chapter so important, because this is the first time Fields will be evaluated without chaos around him. No excuses, no instability, no constant change, just development, and eventually opportunity. So now everything comes down to one question, not whether the Jets made the right decision, not whether the Chiefs got value, but whether Justin Fields can finally become something defined. Because if he succeeds in Kansas City, this trade won't be remembered as the end of his time in New York. It'll be remembered as the moment his career finally found the environment it needed. But if he doesn't, if the same issues follow him, then this won't look like a fresh start. It'll look like confirmation. And in the NFL, once that label sticks, it's almost impossible to shake. So as this season approaches, don't just watch where Justin Fields plays. Watch how he develops. Watch how he responds. Because somewhere between backup reps and unexpected opportunity, his entire career might be decided. And the scary part? We might not even see it coming until it's already happened. What if the New York Jets didn't just trade a quarterback, but quietly admitted they were wrong? Because when Justin Fields was shipped to the Kansas City Chiefs for a future 6th-round pick, it didn't feel like a normal roster move. It felt like an exit, a reset, a decision that had been building long before it became official. And if you look closely, the signs were always there. This matters more than it looks. Because quarterbacks don't just get traded after one season unless something deeper isn't working, especially not a former first-round talent, especially not a player with Fields' athletic profile. But this wasn't about potential anymore. This was about trust. And somewhere along the way, the Jets lost it. Now go back to how this started. Fields arrives in New York with a chance. Not a guarantee, but a real opportunity to stabilize a franchise that has been searching for quarterback answers for years. Not decades, years stacked on years. And at first, there was hope, because Fields brings something you can't teach: explosiveness, playmaking, outside structure, the ability to turn broken plays into highlights. But here's the problem with that kind of skill set in the NFL. It excites you until it doesn't sustain.